Welcome to the Clearlywell Podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Did you know that every day 136 people will die of an opioid overdose? So I'm here today with Avery Nix. He is our number one guest. And Avery, gosh, how long have we known each other now?
At least 2016?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see, we were at a CPI training in Atlanta. For those of you who don't know what CPI is, that's crisis prevention training for usually behavioral health units, addiction and recovery units in schools to help with de-escalation skills. So that's where Avery and I initially met, and we have worked on and off together for all these years now.
Yeah, 8.
8, yes. Crazy town. So anyway, Avery's here today to talk about his story, and I'm just going to kind of give you the floor.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm super excited to be here and be the first guest. That's like really cool.
Do you remember that we talked about doing a podcast probably when I opened the intensive outpatient program, and I was like, we should do a podcast because we had done a radio show together.
That's right.
And then it didn't happen.
Yep.
And you changed jobs a couple times.
Yeah, I've been dancing around a little bit.
Yeah, you
trying to figure it out.
But you got it made now. Anyway,
Yeah,
let's go back.
See.
Let's go way back.
Yeah. So, essentially when we met, I was in the CPI instructor training down there in Atlanta, and I was working for Twin Lakes Recovery Center, which is a detox residential program in Monroe, Georgia.
I did not remember that.
Yep. It's a Summit Behavioral Health Care facility. God, I think Twin Lakes was their 13th facility, and now they're at like 35.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they've gotten into acute psych as well.
That's impressive.
They've done a really good job.
As they should, right?
Yeah,
because
for sure.
we know that mental health and substance use disorder should always be talked about in the same
100%. 100%. And so, I spent like almost 2 years at Twin Lakes, just really trying to get my feet wet, get into the field. I was newly sober and trying to help, kind of figure out what my career was going to look like.
How newly sober were you? Because I knew that you were, but I don't know that I knew it was like real new.
Yeah, I didn't walk into a 12-step program the day before I got a job, but I did have right around 13, 14 months of consecutive.
Very cool.
Yeah, clean time at the time.
That's very nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's go way back.
Yeah. Just to give, kind of a frame of reference, I was, born March 22nd, 1991.
A baby.
Yeah, complete 90s kid, for sure. It was funny story about 90s. I was scrolling through Instagram and found a 90s page, like 90s kids page. Dude, nostalgic. I even posted something about Dragon Ball Z, which was...
Okay, I'm an
so
80s.
Cool.
I'm an 80s girl, so I think that rules.
Yeah. That's cool too. In fact, the 80s are coming back. Been coming back.
Yeah,
it is retro in 2024.
Anyway,
so born March 22nd, 1991. I had a pretty normal childhood.
Whatever that means, right?
Yeah, I had an older wise guy in a 12-step program tell me one time that normal was just the setting on a washing machine.
That is so good. I love that.
Yeah. And so with that being said, I grew up in Hall County, so like northern Hall County, a little town called Claremont. It's like 55 minutes from here.
Yeah, and it's just right there around Gainesville.
Yep, just north of Gainesville. My parents were great. They were super young. They were like 17, 18 years old when they had me. And then they had my brother, who's 3 years younger than me, Zach. And that was us. That was us growing up. We lived on the family compound. I say family compound.
That sounds so serious.
I know. So my great grandfather. This
a little bit like
yeah. This is just like North Georgia, old family town stuff. But my great grandfather Owen had a ton of farmland, and in 1987, him and his wife, my great grandmother Martha, sold off like 100-something acres and settled on like 13.
Wow.
And so my grandparents, so my dad's side of the family, my dad's mom and dad, built a house, and then their two sons, my uncle and my dad, built a couple houses. And so we were all, on the 12 acres.
That's the compound.
That's the compound. Yeah. It was great though. It was, I wouldn't trade it for the world. In fact, I put a 2022 remodel on it a couple years ago. Now I'm in my childhood home. Talk about some full circle stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very good. So you had a very traditional upbringing, it sounds like.
Yeah, I did. I mean, traditional to the sense of, my dad was, an alcoholic growing up, very functioning.
I did not know that.
Yeah, my dad was an alcoholic, very functioning. He worked at Coca-Cola. He did, all of the things they provided for me. We were a middle-class family. And then my mom got diagnosed bipolar as a young adult. And so, from my perspective, as the oldest kid in the family unit, any, feelings of uncertainty around whatever was going on, whether it was dad, being under the influence, or, mom just not quite herself, to whatever degree that looked like at the time. There was some uncertainty and feelings of, well, I need to step up to the plate and like be the protector.
Right.
Like I've got to figure out how to, protect my brother from some of this stuff. I've got to maybe step up and like be a sounding board for my mom, for my dad's stuff, right?
Right.
That like whole surrogate husband stuff that we learn about in clinical. It was a trip. It was a trip, and I took on many faces, and I took on, many situations that, really forced me in a place to kind of grow up. And so that whole like childhood experience, I did all the things. I was watching Dragon Ball Z, Toonami, Midnight Run, I was doing all the things and, played sports and was an athlete, but.
It sounds like you did a lot of maybe covering up.
Well, what are we in therapy here? Come on. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, for sure. I definitely did. I tried to be the glue to kind of keep everything together, and that came with its own consequences as I got older.
Right.
Fast forward a little ways. I was probably 12 years old. This is about 2002, 2003. Adolescent, emerging adolescent. And I had all these ideas and hormones were going crazy. And anyway, I broke my arm 2012. This was my first experience with really any like mood or mind altering chemicals. I broke my arm in the driveway. I thought I was going to be like the next Tony Hawk, Of
course
like
you did.
Idol. So, I'm over here like skating in the driveway. Anyway, tried to do this trick, fell, broke my arm, rushed me to the hospital, and I believe, thinking back, they hit me with morphine and went to set my arm. So whatever that was that they put in, they set my arm. And then, interestingly enough, it's all like hindsight, kind of looking back.
Right.
And there was all these feelings up to this point, and I really do feel like it all just kind of came to a head, at this point. And then it seems like the next several years were a blur. Yes, I had some highlights and some lowlights as far as just growing up in public school and being in North Hall area. But
well, let's go back to the arm.
Yeah.
So they hit you with the morphine. Did they send you home with anything?
So they hit me with the morphine. They set my arm, put a partial cast on, sent me home with Tylenol 3.
Ooh.
Yeah, T3, which is just a acetaminophen and hydrocodone, essentially.
It is.
And, it was take as needed for pain, every 4 hours.
And that was really common.
Yeah.
And up until probably last 7 or 8 years ago, that was the norm.
Yes. And I knew that, even at that age, and this was after I took the T3, but I can remember thinking to myself, wow, this feels really good. Like I'm impressed at how well this, how good this feels.
And did you press mom for maybe getting it a little more often, or?
So, one thing, and she doesn't know this, but she's about to now. One thing she didn't know was that I knew I read on the label, like every 4 hours. So even if I didn't feel pain, I still knew I could go to her and act like
right.
I was hurting,
Yeah.
And so there's this, victim mentality behavior, that's really starting to take place at a very early on stage.
Because mom does not want her baby boy to be hurting.
Sure.
And there wasn't a lot out there at that time about opioids or hydrocodone or any of the branding that goes along with the opioids. It was pretty common that that's what was given to go home, from any hospital emergency department or even a clinic for pain. That was the typical prescription.
100%. And so I'm pretty sure I wrote that out until it was gone. I mean, I can't remember. I mean, as soon as I would take a T3, I was,
good to go for a little bit.
Yeah, I was back on my skateboard in the driveway with a partial cast on. So, and it was interesting. I can remember, having this like kind of adverse reaction a lot to, what are considered downers and uppers. Lortab being more of a downer, hydrocodone, I would feel energized, peppy, ready to go take on the world,
And we do see that certain, and I'm not over here diagnosing you, so
you're
don't think that. But no, I have seen certain mental health diagnoses where the opioid class of drug does the opposite. Mm-hmm. Instead of being a depressant, it is an upper.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, I experienced that. I really didn't, do anything else. I mean, for the most part, even though my family dynamic was what it was, I felt very sheltered. A lot of my friends and stuff were out doing this or doing that, and just things that I didn't quite experience. And so I really started to kind of carve my own lane, trying to find myself and figure some of that stuff out, just as a adolescent. Smoked weed for the first time when I was 13.
Oh, okay.
Only reason why I did that is because I had a buddy of mine who was like, hey man, you want to smoke weed? And I'm like, sure, and this kid was like, I wanted to be just like him,
Right.
I was like, God, looking at his social status in school, how he reacted around females. I mean, all these things, as a 13-year-old, super important. So I needed to figure out what that looked like. And he just opened the door for, hey, in my mind telling me, this is how you kind of act.
This is what the cool kids are doing.
It is essentially that. It sounds super lame, but
when you're 13, that's what's up, right?
That is the deal.
So you smoked pot the first time at 13. What did that feel like?
I didn't really feel anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't.
So no big story there, but you're starting to dabble in about a year's time.
Yeah, I'm starting to dabble about a year later after that. I mean, listen, I experienced some pretty severe consequences the first time I tried anything, because we all got caught. Like the friends, we were all kind of together, smoking the peace pipe, and I think one of the guys told his mom what happened, and the mom reached out to all of our parents. So it was this whole thing. And I was grounded for a period of time, so I didn't really get to do anything.
It doesn't seem like there was a big deterrent not to ever do that again.
I mean, for a year.
Okay.
A year.
So now you're 14.
I'm 14, and, y'all, at this point, so backtrack a little bit. I was diagnosed with a autoimmune disorder when I was a kid. So I had rheumatoid arthritis, a juvenile case.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. Pretty rare from what I understand.
It really is, yeah.
So it's central in my right knee. And so, I was going to the rheumatologist once a month. I mean, I can remember, 9, I was getting my knee drained and cortisone shots put in.
Goodness.
Just to help with, the inflammation. And, I was on several different autoimmune medications and things like that, even to the point where I would take, prednisone as needed, like a small dose of prednisone to help with inflammation. which has its own like side effects.
Yes.
And it's kind of wild because I look back to some of that stuff and I got pictures where I was a little round faced,
Yeah, you do get that what's called moon face.
Yeah.
Steroids.
But I was dead set on being an athlete, and there was always this push because of the rheumatoid arthritis. Like, I'm a kid, dude. When you have juvenile rheumatoid, at least I didn't. I was like, I don't feel anything. Yeah, it's a little swollen, gets a little stiff, but I warm up and I'm back on the field, So I played baseball, and a little bit of basketball. When I got into like 7th, 8th grade, there was a lot of emphasis on, at least for me, I was putting on myself. I really wanted to figure out how to just fit in better. I was taking a look at all my friends and all this group of people, and it was in my community really. And it was public school, but there's a lot of folks that had a lot more money than I did. I mean, I was fascinated by some of this stuff and just really kind of fell victim to this idea of like entitlement to a degree. Like I should be entitled to what my friend has.
I think all teenagers, I mean, there's always someone that has more than what you have, right? And you do fall into that, especially in your youth, you know?
And, it's so funny because, I'm literally like, me and my girlfriend, we're trying really hard to impress this on our daughter. It's like, hey, we've really got to figure this stuff out and try to get ahead of it. So it's interesting going back and kind of reliving some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's even probably more so that way today. I mean, think about, was it in the 90s where they had the MTV Sweet 16 and it became like this?
Yeah.
The parties were over the top, and then everyone thought they should be entitled to have some crazy $100,000 16th birthday.
Yeah.
So you're talking about around 7th, 8th grade. You were trying to figure it out. You're
trying to figure it out. So super paranoid about what people thought about me. I mean, not like legit paranoid, but I was very aware. And when I got my cast off after I broke my arm, I noticed that my arm was like super small compared to this arm. And I'd gotten a weight set for Christmas. So I just got into the gym. Very unprompted. I'm just I'm going to go get after it. And so I kind of did my own physical therapy. And
you probably didn't even know that was what it was that you were doing.
No idea. But it was my body's way of, hey, let's get back on top. And so I got back into the 8th grade, and, everything just started clicking for me socially. I was in shape. I was looking good. I was kind of growing through, some of this weird 6th, 7th grade, adolescent stuff. And part of that came with the pressure to fit in, obviously, and to kind of do my own due diligence and carving out my own lane. And then football became a huge piece of my life. And I finally just was I put enough pressure on my parents, put enough pressure on my rheumatologist. I'm like, yo, look, I'm playing football, period, And, all my buddies were playing football, so that's just what I fell into. And so I got involved in the high school football team about 9th grade. And I'm 14 years old at this point.
So you're super healthy at this point now.
Yeah. I mean, for a 14-year-old, yeah, I'm pretty healthy, biscuit eating, corn eating country boy,
Yeah, but you're working it all off on the field.
Yeah, for sure. I can remember New Year's Eve. I was with a couple buddies of mine who also played football, and we were with their set of parents, and we got drunk for the first time, sneaking champagne and stuff. New Year's Eve, just really. I mean, when you look at this from a bird's eye view, I feel like we're talking about
this is normal stuff.
This is normal.
Yeah, this is what all kids do.
Growing pains. This is what it is. So, there's a lot of red flags and all this education that's circling in my head as far as hey, when you experience this, there might be a red flag to maybe not drink, or if your family has a history of alcoholism, maybe you should,
Right, but you're a kid and you don't know that.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. So
just because we live in this world now and we know all the answers, well, we don't really know all the answers, but
right.
We have the education behind it. It seems like, gosh, shouldn't I have known that? But No, you were a kid.
Yep, absolutely. So, got plastered. I mean, woke up in the front yard of the little suburban neighborhood. There was frost on the ground. I can remember my buddy like picking me up, like, "Hey, dude, you got to get inside." I'm like passed out in the front yard.
Oh no.
Yeah, good stuff. So that was my first experience of getting completely wasted. And then woke up the next morning, went to Waffle House, went home, and that was the story. Didn't really experience too many repercussions from that, even though my family found out that I'd gotten drunk. So obviously I probably smelled like reeked of alcohol when I got home.
Right. But again, you're still kind of within the realm of what's considered normal
for sure.
Children dabbling, right? For sure.
Fast forward a year later, I'm a sophomore in high school, and it was homecoming. Now, I'm just kind of going through the motions. Really trying to do well in school, do well in my athletic career. And for homecoming, we were with a big group of our friends, and I was responsible. We got a party bus, and I was responsible for getting the alcohol. I felt responsible. I don't know if anybody does, and I can't remember, but I felt very responsible for going to get the alcohol. And, of course, I knew the guy in school that also knew the guy that could get us alcohol. I mean, 15. And
did I hear you right? You knew the guy who knew the guy.
I knew the guy who knew the guy. That's right.
Got it.
The guy who knew the guy. And he was, essentially like, dude, I'm not going to be able to get alcohol, but I do have these OCs. And I said, oh, what's that? He's like, Oxycontin. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
And I was like, what is that? I had no idea. And he's like, it's kind of like taking Loratab, but way better. I was like, okay. And then here was the rationalization. It's like, these are going to be better anyway, because like administration and teachers at homecoming aren't going to be able to smell it on your breath. I was like, that makes a lot of sense, dude. Like, I'm with you.
There's the rationale.
Yeah. This is the same guy I smoked weed with for the first time. So we're on the right train here. I mean, not really, but yeah. At the time it felt very right. So this was my first experience of like actually going out, getting drugs, going back home, having it on me, right?
Okay.
And so at homecoming, we were at Benihana's in Atlanta somewhere, I don't remember. And about midway through dinner, I was like, well, I'm going to go pop like half of this Oxycontin 15. Or it was like a 20 or something. I can't remember. Yeah.
So that was on a higher dose.
Yeah, 20 milligrams, yeah. Than the T3s, right?
Yeah. And even like normally you see like 7.5, something like that next, right?
True, yeah.
So you're up there.
So I'm up there, and I went to the bathroom, I popped half, swallowed it, came back, about 15, 20 minutes later into dinner. It was like, the noise just got quieter. All of a sudden, I noticed I was connecting better with the guys. I was broing out, And then I was getting along better.
What does broing out mean?
Well, like I was connecting with the guys. Connecting with the guys.
Okay.
Just
had to throw that out there.
Connecting with the guys. And so, then the girls got prettier.
Oh, okay.
It was legit.
So it was when you say things got quieter, that tells me that your life was loud for you.
Yeah, it was. Not a lot of noise going on, Now, I wasn't like hearing like loud voices necessarily,
We're not going down that
Although
path.
I obviously know people that do, which is no judgment.
No, exactly.
Here I am. And it felt, I just felt like I'd like kind of found the solution to all of my problems. And it's funny because I talk to like, people that necessarily didn't experience a full-blown addiction to stuff or whatever it may be.
Right.
And they have this different narrative with their experience if they did try a drug or two. And their experience isn't that. It's very much, it made me feel like super dizzy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sitting here thinking I itch. I have a very itchy reaction to opioids,
I hate
which
the itch.
is thankful.
Right.
I mean, I really have to say, I think I probably have a little bit of addictive personality. And I think for me, I've always kind of been happy that when I was given an opioid, I had like that full body scratching sensation. Like it was terrible. So for me, that was just a not going to happen drug for me. Thankfully.
I hear that. I'm like, God, I loved the itch. I wanted to rip my nose off at least every 2 hours.
Like, wow.
Yeah.
So you just had a really, that almost like perfection reaction that I hear described a lot.
Yeah, had a really good first impression. Sounds so bad, but I'm just giving you all the raw.
No,
like,
you
this
have
is
to
what
give
it was,
it.
You know,
give it like it is. You know, because people want to hear. You know, and so far you're the Georgia good old boy football player, popular, all the things. You know, because we say drugs don't discriminate. Substance use disorder doesn't discriminate. We certainly know mental health does not discriminate. So you telling that piece of it, I think, is really important.
Yeah, for sure. It is super important. There's a lot of people out there that I've learned over the years, specifically being in the field, where, dude, they are so lost in the space of you know, feeling like they can't connect, you know, to like from an empathetic level, like what's going on around them, you know. So
like shut down flat.
Yeah, like nobody understands, and I can remember that feeling.
So okay, so you've just taken like probably 10 or so milligrams.
Yeah, I finished the night off with like 20, 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're feeling good.
Yeah, feeling good. Everything's clicking. Just had a great night. You know, great night. Let's see. Trying to think. That was 15. So yeah, I mean, really, like the next, 3 years. It's a Friday night light kind of town.
Right.
It's now, work hard, play hard.
Yeah. So were you continuing? You're playing football. You're living your best life as high school kid, doing all the things. Are you here and there? Are you still dabbling?
Yeah. So it became very important that we work hard during the week, and then my Friday nights and Saturday nights were, what's the closest party we can get to? Where can we go get loaded? And
what did loaded consist of? I mean, was this like a mixture of drugs?
It was drinking and smoking weed at this point.
Okay, so no more OCs at this point.
Yeah, unless it was just available,
Right.
And then as I got into when I got to 17 and 18, it really started bleeding more towards pharmaceuticals. But that 15 to 16 era was a lot of just heavy drinking every weekend. I'm sure there was a couple weekends there where I had family stuff or whatever and I didn't drink, but for the most part I was very regular.
And so at this point, are you thinking that there might be any correlation between your own behavior and your father, or is that just something that you blocked out?
So I had some suspicions, right? Just these lurking notions in the back of my head that would say things like, dude, you kind of act just like your dad. But in my mind, I'm like, well, my dad's maybe drinking himself to death, but I'm going to kill myself this way, whatever. So,
and probably are you rationalizing that you are so regimented during the week with football and academics that the weekend stuff is you deserve that?
The beautiful thing about team sports, and I'm a huge advocate, is that it for a guy like me, it gave me the structure and the accountability, right, to really kind of follow through, because it was super important to me. I mean, I had some extremely good coaches in high school that really kind of took me in and just showed me hey, if you do, X, Y, and Z, these are the results. These are good consequences to this working hard for everything. So I did get an extremely good work ethic, playing football and team sports, because I wrestled one year. I mean, I remember my sophomore year specifically, I played football, I wrestled, and then I ran track, and then it became football and track. So everything, I was a running back, so everything was about how do I get bigger, faster, stronger,
Yeah.
How can I score as many touchdowns as I can and break away from as many tackles as possible? I mean, that was my MO. And
so possibly that was really keeping you from doing things you might have gone down a rabbit hole otherwise.
I think so, because I could have bottomed out a lot quicker. Looking back, I still bottomed out pretty fast.
So fast forward, you're now into the 17, 18, and you said you're getting the party on a little bit more. You're starting to go towards the pharmaceuticals more often. Yeah,
100%. So there's several things that start happening at 17, 18 years old. Just between my family life, my interpersonal skills were like horrible. I was really good at connecting on a superficial level. Talk about the weather, maybe your biggest trauma. We'll talk about it. Keep moving forward, But as far as developing knowing how to develop deep, long-lasting relationships, I just didn't have that ability, or maybe I did have that ability, but I wasn't able to
access it, not assess it, access it.
My theory is it's an attachment issue.
So do you think there might have been some rational detachment,
for sure. I mean, I was afraid of what, committing in a relationship would look like. This not only with male friends, but female friends as well. Some of these romantic relationships that I had growing up. I mean, it was very stark, just how I treated people. I became more and more self-absorbed, trying to do whatever I could to change the way I feel. It wasn't just about pharmaceuticals. It wasn't just about drinking on the weekend. I mean, I'm essentially using people, right?
Wow.
To get what I need.
That's some huge self-awareness.
Dude, that's the truth of... So I'm 17 years old. I'm playing football. I'm in school. Grades are pretty good. Decent, I didn't study, so
So you're real smart.
I mean...
You're a smart guy.
I mean, I wasn't getting a 4.0 not studying, but, I was 3.2. I was happy with it, I was happy with it. May have been a 3.1. I don't know. I just looked at my transcripts recently, and I don't want to lie because I'm...
It's okay.
on camera.
So, basically, you're a B student without studying, which is amazing.
Yeah, B student, drinking on the weekends. So what ended up happening, I'm 17 years old. I'm going into my senior year of high school. In my senior season, we just came off an impressive year, getting into the semifinals of the Georgia High School Association, the playoffs, essentially.
Yep.
And my senior year was a rebuild year. So we're over here trying to rebuild because we lost a ton of seniors. And, my weekends were becoming, Friday, Saturday nights, play hard was becoming Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then it was becoming Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a couple days during the week. I mean, I can remember grabbing Dad's alcohol bottle out of the cabinet, going back to my room, chugging some alcohol on a Tuesday night, playing Guitar Hero till 10:30. That was my deal.
So it's bleeding now into the weekdays.
Yeah, and I'm starting to do it by myself.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not just socially.
So that's a huge deal because and not that we knew it when we were kids, right? But it really is. That's sort of the bar, right? Is when I don't mean the actual bar. I mean the standard of when you start to do anything recreational all by yourself.
Yep.
That's sort of a milestone of going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would say so. It seems like you start, you hear people talk about the imaginary line, this imaginary threshold that you cross through of no return. Right. It started dipping into that a little bit. You got to think, this is my senior year in high school, rebuild year. We barely made it in the playoffs, to be super transparent. I mean, it was a rough year. We went into the first round of the playoffs. We played Hart County. They were the number one team in the state. We didn't have a chance. We ended up beating them by a field goal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. Huge deal. So in my mind, I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, that was like the moment. That was the game, right? And, all of the like accolades that came with that, MVP of the game, hitting the newspaper several times that year. I mean, there was just a lot of fluff and just a lot of...
You were famous in a small town.
I mean, it wasn't that crazy because
I know what it's like to be a small town girl.
Town North Hall kid. So like, there was many more guys that like had way more clout than I did. But in my mind, from where I came from and my experiences, and you got to think I'm becoming more and more self-absorbed. I mean, I put myself on this like pedestal way up here, and it was super like egocentric. Like at the end of the day, So here I am, and I'm starting to lose my like ambitions and drive. It's like I put all my eggs in this basket of like high school. Like, dude, I was that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like that guy beating on the bar with his varsity jacket, like talking about the good old days. Dude, like I felt like that dude, and it was like, dude, it was so cliche and hardcore looking back at it, but. I'm going through the motions, and I experienced so many like just excruciating, like pivotal growing pains. Football season was over with. I was like, well, I'm not gonna go to the gym. I'm not gonna really hire my education. I mean, I had a guy, come some D3 stuff, some D2 stuff come in, as far as maybe hiring my education, getting a partial scholarship and going to play ball and doing all those things. Those things could have happened if I just showed an ounce of willingness. But at this point, I was so shut down. And a lot of that it was fear. It was fear of, getting out of this like comfort zone of high school and hometown stuff. I just didn't know what that was going to look like.
Do you think you were depressed?
I mean, I'm sure.
Pretty sure you were.
I'm sure.
No, I mean, honestly, I think that as you've talked about that, and you're really so transparent about who you see yourself as growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think like early on, I think there was depression.
100%.
And I bring that up because I always say I just feel like there's that correlation is there between depression, mental health, and substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It's filling the gap for something.
For sure. When I did graduate high school. I managed to graduate, which was great. Not to do anything my second semester, but I managed to graduate. And my drug use and alcohol use continued to escalate. To the point where, it was like every day I was trying to figure out and essentially getting street smart, trying to figure out how to cop and get loaded. And it was Oxycontin, Xanax, and alcohol and weed. I mean, those were my top four.
Wow. So now you're doing the full gamut.
I'm doing the full gamut, sprinkling some Adderall in there just in case I need to stay awake, but whatever it was.
You were speedballing.
Essentially, yeah. I did that for a long time.
Okay. So I think we're going to stop right there, and we will be back in episode 2,
cool.
The final part of Avery Nick's story. I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearlywell is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.